I think it was Francis Ngannou. I was listening to an interview of him on the it was UFC Unfiltered or something. So shout out to that show. He was talking about betting odds, and this is something that we talk about, right? It's one of the kind of main aspects of the program that we run here. Wagering, it's important. This is part of being a fan of the sport. But when you're a fighter, it's a little bit different. Obviously, as a fighter, you're not necessarily going to want to pay attention to those things all the time, unless you got a rock solid mental game, so where you can kind of be like, oh yeah, minus 300, whatever. Throw some money on me. I know I'm still gonna whoop this dude's ass. Some people, they allow the betting odds to shape the narrative of their fight going into it. But Francis Ngannou said, hey, don't forget, I'm pretty sure the first time that he fought Stipe Miocic, he was a pretty massive favorite, and he lost very convincingly across the board in that matchup. So he was like, betting odds really don't mean anything. At the end of the day, it's one man versus another, mano a mano in the cage. That's where the fight takes place. That's what it comes down to. So he kind of mentioned that, and I'm foreshadowing because Francis Ngannou is a betting underdog in his fight against Cyril Gane. However, when you do have, like I just said, AJ, Ilia Topuria, who is a minus 650 favorite with a plus 475 comeback for a Charles Jourdain, do you look at that and do you immediately count these people out when you see it, or do you hold that same mentality of, hey man, a fight is a fight, and anything can happen in the cage? We've seen betting odds go wrong all the time. So what do you think about that?
I give it, so it's, leading back to the way I kind of do things, Derek. I've started to look at the odds just a little bit more now. I break them down before I get my picks. I look at the odds just a little bit because you're right, it is a big part of being a fan, seeing how things go, man. But I'm a firm believer of it's a fight. It's that night, how things go down, mano a mano. Numbers don't mean shit once the door locks, man. And I truly believe that no matter what happens, or anything could happen in the cage. Fight odds can lead one way or the other, especially we've seen it come up where both you and I will be predicting a certain way and we see the odds and I'm like, oh, okay, completely wrong against what I was thinking. They must have something, the Vegas odds makers must have something tucked behind their shoulder, just, a little extra sneak peek that we're not getting. So they must know a little something. So I do think the odds play into account, at least on our side, on the betting side, play a little something. But as far as getting locked in that ring, man, it's mano a mano, hands are flying. Nothing can be predicted basically in those outcomes. Yeah, man, that's what I think. What about you, Derek?
Yeah, I would agree with you in some respect. Also, listen, dude, these dudes out here in Vegas with their betting lines and all that stuff, like, these dudes are professionals for a reason, and they make a lot of money in and out every single year. So sometimes you do have to wonder, what do they know that I don't know? Because they do get some inside information sometimes, but then you see some lines and you're like, that's not right. That, for an example, it was a close fight, AJ. Some people were talking robbery. I think at the end of the day, the right man won. But Brandon Royval was a betting favorite against Rogerio Bontorin last week. And I said, I don't know, man. I like Bontorin in this fight. It had nothing to do with the odds. It had more of, I was just looking at the styles, looking at the frames, looking at, okay, this is how so-and-so had success here. They struggled against this. I think that this man is going to win regardless of what the betting odds are. But that's the hard part, is sometimes, folks, at home, if you want a little inside scoop into the process, the betting odds can even skew our thought process on the fights, right? Because last thing we want is in our head have a line of, okay, this guy's going to win, this guy's going to win, this guy's going to win. Then you look at the odds and you're like, oh shit, they're like all massive betting underdogs. Like, I don't know. Are they still going to win? Like, that's not necessarily what you want. You don't want it to let it skew, at the end of the day, your picks, because we're over here competing, brother. You know what I mean? We trying to get a head up over here. So we got to be on the money. But with that being said, I thought that was just an interesting takeaway from Francis Ngannou, just saying, like, listen, betting odds mean nothing because the real fight is in the cage. And it could be, listen, sometimes you don't know. You might be having a bad day, a bad week, something you talk about all the time. You might not be peaking at the right moment. You might have peaked a couple days ago, or you'll peak in a couple days after. So it's all stuff to take into consideration. But